9 o'clock, so I was thinking we could get started.
Sorry.
You guys are ready?
You good, Karen?
Yes.
I heard from Bob, stopped by the office yesterday and said he's not going to be able to make it this morning, and Mark is running about a half hour late, Mark Newell. I don't even see a card for him.
Yeah, what?
It's it's Carrie and Mark thing.
You just switch it.
Do I need to turn this on?
No, I did it already. And I edited out the beginning.
Hot mic.
Huh? Yeah.
There's also copies of the agenda up on the table over here if you need one. I think what I'd like to do first is a round of introductions, just because we have the intro DM that a lot of you haven't met or hasn't met yet, so everybody knows who everybody is. Why don't we start with you, Bob? We'll go around the table and then we'll do the audience.
Bob Alley, representing Tuna and Salmon.
Gene Law, Trevor Crabber, fishing vessel on his law.
Clint Thunderbird, Fort Dock 7.
Ken Gibson, Commercial Marine Harbor Master.
Dama, International Terminal Supervisor.
Aaron Bretz, Director of Operations for the port.
Terry Dressler, Interim General Manager. Hello to those of you I haven't met yet. Karen Hewitt, Port Administrative Supervisor.
Dave Dahlman, Troyer Marine, Shoreside Industries.
I'm Heather Mann. I work for the Midwater Trawlers Cooperative, and I'm the chair of this committee. Sarah Skinner, I'm the Port Commissioner, and Tom Powell.
Stuart Lamberton on the Port Commission. Ted Gibson, Shrimper Crabber.
David Jenks, Distant Water Fleet.
John, why don't we start with you?
John Holt, Pacific Fishing, alternate for Shrimper Trawler.
Radio Junior, CDOT.
Dean Flack with Inland Marine.
Robert Smith, Fisherman, Port User.
Mike Story, Whiting Fisherman, Pegasus.
Noel Verb, Sweet Seafood, Sweetie Plant, Fishing.
Casey Cooper, fishing vessel Pacific.
Chris Cooper, Perseverance.
Jim Stevers, Fisherman Newport.
Dave Smith, fisherman, Newport, Big Small Island.
Terry Thompson, Steele County Commissioner. Not for long.
Thanks, Terry. Okay, so if everybody has an agenda, let's go ahead and go over the agenda and see if there's any changes. I will say that we have a public comment period up front and one at the end. For those of you who have been to the meetings of this committee before, I like to take public comment throughout the meeting on each agenda item, as long as it stays within reason. So I think it's really helpful for the people that are in the audience to be able to provide their input. So I will plan on doing that today. There's a lot to cover, and I'd like to not spend all day here, so I'm sure most of you would. So is there anybody that has any changes from the committee to the agenda? If not, we'll just keep moving. Is there anybody that wants to give a public comment up front? Next on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the July 13th regular meeting. Do we have those?
Yes, they're attached.
Oh. So Karen, you said that
You approved the minutes from all those, that's from the minutes. So those were all approved at the last meeting.
okay. Does anybody have any changes to the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to...
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as they were.
Thanks, Ted. Second? Thanks, Jean. Any opposition? Not? Let's say that those have been unanimously approved. And let's move into the next agenda item, which is space usage at the International Terminal. Aaron or Terry, do you want to kick it off? I did bring some copies with me of a platform that we had, the fishing industry, shrimpers, crabbers, distant water fleet had put together and submitted to the commission 2 years ago now, or at least a year ago. Someone had mentioned it'd be a good idea to have that here as we have this conversation. So maybe you guys start and then we can pass this out after.
Okay. Thanks, Heather. I'll start. So, needless to say, I'm learning lots and lots every day. I haven't been here quite 4 months yet, so I'm probably the least informed and intelligent person in the room, and so bear with me if I use a term or a phrase that just doesn't make sense, and you shake your head and say she doesn't know what she's talking about, because it's true. But I have, with Aaron's help, I've picked his brain sort of multiple times every single day, and I've learned an awful lot about the value that you all bring to the port and the value you all bring to this greater community of Newport, and you're so important to the success of the port. And I want to say that honestly and sincerely to you, because I think sometimes that gets forgotten and gets lost. But we do value all of you as customers, stakeholders, and the importance that you bring to the port and the community. And as such, we wanted to come to you first with some questions about a proposed small shipping operation that we've received a call about. And actually, Aaron received the first call, and we've had one additional phone call. It's in a very conceptual phase at this point, but this would be one log barge a month and some laydown space for logs adjacent to the pier at the international terminal, and we would anticipate the barge would be in and out within 48 hours on a monthly basis. And we have, I guess, not we in terms of me, but in terms of Don and Aaron, talked about how we might accommodate that request at the terminal without having a negative impact or displacing any of the business that any of you are currently doing at the terminal. And so I think one of the things that's really important to us at the port is that we share this with you and talk with you about the feasibility of what we are thinking might work there, and allow you the opportunity to ask questions and say, nah, you guys are off base, we don't think that's going to work, or we think, yeah, that might work. So it's really important to us to get that feedback, and it's why we've asked for feedback from the advisory group on this issue. So I'm going to let Aaron and Don speak to the specifics and just start the conversation.
All right, thanks, Terry. Basically, it's not very specific right now because, as Terry mentioned, it's still a concept. But it looks like what they might need would be the 3.3 acre laydown space. And they would need, like Terry said, 48 hours or so at the pier to load logs. In between that time, of course, they wouldn't occupy the pier space, the pier face itself. They'd be set back off of the edge of the pier so that we can still get in there and service boats in between time, between barge shipments. And they would use, it's about a 250 foot to 300 foot log barge would be the size, what they think. They couldn't nail that down for me on here's exactly what it's going to be. So I think the hardest thing to fit into what you guys have already expressed as your concerns, and I've practically got these memorized. I've probably consulted them about 150 times over the last year. So probably the hardest thing for us to squeeze in there. They did say they'd be able to stand off for a couple of months, possibly 3. So I eyeballed these dates, and it seemed like it was in that realm in there, that it might we might be able to pull it off. the laydown space, I think, is the hardest part of it. So if you remember the last year, what I remember was from the last time we were talking about trying to get something in there. You got the west end of the pier and the hoist dock, and then the east berth over here. There was a lot of problems, especially in this space right in here. We got to leave access to the hoist dock so that we can get boats in there still and do the work that we got to do. They were talking last year about using this area. Well, I walked out to 3.3 acres on Google Earth, and I wasn't at the port when all the planning was going on for the last potential operation. So I don't know why, but that laydown area extended all the way over to here, and it went all the way back up by the road. So it looked more like this right here on around. So 3.3 acres though is actually set back off the pier. It stops short and then comes out to the road and goes up this way. So it's a little bit smaller than I think what people were looking at before, which was a bit of a relief to me because then it leaves you a lot more space over here on the east side to be able to use for pots during the fall, net reels, at other times of the year, whatever you got. So that's kind of that's the bare bones of it, and there's not much more to it right now than that. I'd be happy to answer questions. Go ahead.
Aaron, where's the Hennebeek in that?
So it's over east of this laydown area. So it's over it's a little bit closer over in here.
And that, you're not supposed to put anything on that.
Right.
I just have a comment and then we'll take questions. The one thing about this platform, like I said, it was done a year and a half ago or so. I think some things have changed since this was done, like some of the boats using, and you guys correct me, so when we transferred some of the activity from this hoist up to the terminal when this hoist was too busy. And I don't know if that fits in that they're just using that side, but also I think there's more crab pots and other gear up there than there have been or was a couple of years ago. So I would say that this part of what our goal today would be is to update this to reflect what's been happening up at the terminal in the last year and a half. So committee members have questions so far?
Well, I like the approach this time of coming to users before making agreements and then telling the users what they were going to end up with. So this is a far better approach. And, but one of the things that that's always hanging there is you got 3.3 acres, and that's fine, but then we have to discuss truck access in and out, what that's going to take up, or is that going to be in the footprint of 3.3 acres?
I think we want to try and keep that in the footprint of the 3.3 acres.
Okay. And
My
that's
goal.
Fine. The other, and I think everybody's aware who's coming up with the discussion and where it's coming from, but, the last time we met with them, they said that what the fishing industry needed, they couldn't do. Basically, straight out front, into discussion, we can't live by that. So I don't know if things have changed in their mind and that they're now realizing that there is other needs that need to be addressed up there. But that was the word we got last time, and that was the end of discussions was, this doesn't fit our program, sorry.
So this is barging logs or finished lumber?
Yeah, it's logs. They've changed their operation is what they did. So it doesn't, it's like I said, it's different. Whatever they're flex, and they did mention they're flexible. They're happy to work to try and fit it in there. But yeah, it's logs going up to the Columbia River and Port Angeles is what it sounds like. So.
Aaron, what's the length of the dock from the west end towards your
500 to 25 feet.
And that's perfect. It gives you room for barges and for boats to tie up.
It seems like we could make it work.
Just to be clear, the hoist would be usable
Yes.
while logs are being loaded?
Yes.
Okay.
and that they will respect the set-aside times of the dock that we need.
Yeah, so we haven't got into trying to refine. The most specific thing I got is they said, well, we could do without a couple of months, maybe 3, and so then I looked at that and it starts to get whittled down to days. How many days? Because like one of the things in here is we're talking November 1 to January 10th, so that's outside of technically 2 months, a couple of months, right? So I know how important that last chunk is, especially up to the 10th, because there's a lot of boats that are trying to squeeze time in down here before they head out for Alaska, and it gets real busy out there, especially that last 10 days or so. So I know that's critical.
Well, Aaron, November, December, and the first week of January is critical. These were fallback dates. We took October off during the first negotiations.
Okay.
These are our fallback dates.
All right.
So,
Well, and I guess to add on to that, we, I started trying to take a tally of how many boats were at the dock at what times of the year. But then it dawned on me that really you guys should have that information, right? Because you're charging everybody for that usage. And you can see that we're actually using, well, and Don knows, we're using the dock 12 months out of the year. So we feel like we were already making compromises by putting these, giving these dates.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's opportunity to have a negotiation before you go too far down the path with the potential shipper, so that we can really have an understanding of what their flexibility is.
Okay. Yeah, well, here's one of the challenges I got. If you view this document and then go and try to apply it, you'll see that there's difficulty to try and stick to the definitions, and because it's going to take. We're going to have to really get. It's tight. You guys know it's not that big a space out there. So. All right, so when we're talking about November 1 to January 10th, we need, higher up it talks about it's not unusual to see 12 to 15, because it's not 12 to 15 large trawl vessels out there, and those are the dates right here. If you go down and it talks about we need space for 12 large catcher vessels to no more than 2 deep at the IT from November 1 to January 10th and April 1 to May 15th. So we need to keep, the hoist open for those folks, and so on down the line. So I believe that we have space, but to see the catcher vessel, because when you get down to it, a catcher vessel can be a 38-foot salmon trawler, it could be an 80-foot dragger. So there's variability in there for me to, when I go to try and plan something. I need to know from those guys exactly how long your barge is, and then I need to get a good number on how long, because I've used 80 foot before as kind of a benchmark, but we get bigger boats than that in out there. So
we have 120 foot boats.
Yeah, so do you use 120 foot times 6 deep, 6 long, 2 wide? Or do you use 80, or do you use a mixture of it? Because usually there's a mixture, and so it's a tough thing for me to go, all right, this is exactly what it is, and this is what I can do or can't. And the same thing on their end. So I need specific, because I could probably move the numbers around a little bit and be able to leave room for just exactly that, even with a barge in for 2 days. We can,
So would this right here be a sort of a permanent kind of thing?
Yeah, so I think the way I interpreted it is that they would, when he said we'd be able to do without 2 months, maybe 3, then I would figure that would include that space right there. Like you'd have to not have that occupied during those 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
And like this year we've got, what you said, 11 extra boats putting crab gear out. Or are we up higher than that now?
We're lower than that now. They're getting loaded
right.
slowly,
but it was around 11 boats using it for Dungeness spots out there. So, and it was more than last year. I talked to Jim Durkee and asked. I said, "What have you seen like in years past?" And he said, "It's not unusual to have 11." And he said, "It's has happened before." So, what we see out there right now, which is more in the last couple of years, is something that we should consider is a potential use in the future. You know what I mean? Like, it's not unusual. So.
Other questions from committee members?
So if this dock, the main dock's 525 feet, you said?
Yeah.
So if he ties on the end at 300 feet, that still leaves 225 feet up towards the hoist. You know, you can still double tie 2 boats and still get 4 boats there while they're unloading or loading a barge.
You still have to have room for a tugboat.
The tug would tie outboard. I thought about that. The tug, if there was a tugboat that was in during, it would sit outboard of the barge.
What I'm getting at is it's going to displace a lot less boats doing this than it would with a ship that overhung the hoist and blocked the hoist in the entire face.
Yeah, but the key point.
Some of it is still usable.
The key point in all of it is what length are we going to use for those 12 catcher sized vessels, or is it possible to say Don here, who has served pretty well over the last year and a half, is gonna, because there is he has the ability to get those boats rotated through there how he needs to. I don't know. I believe he does, but whether or not everybody else does that's your opinion.
I guess I don't have a concern. I've heard really good things about what Don's been able to do up there. But when you say rotate those boats through there, there's no other spot in the port for these boats to tie up. And I'm pretty sure that people that use Port Dock 5 don't want any of these boats trying to tie up down there. Port Dock 5 is full. So what do you mean by...
Might have to jockey him around from the inside tide, move a boat out, slide it in, just shuffling game at the terminals.
So that he can, because if somebody needs work done from the crane or something like that, there's always a shell game. So. And
everybody's pretty good already about the shell game up there, so it's not that big of a deal.
You got Dock 1. Maybe you could make Dock 3 work for a boat or two. I don't know.
David?
And that's real. I think that's feasible. But what I'm not understanding here is it looks like we're moving away from the needed set-aside times that we need at the terminals. Is that what we're doing? Because what Aaron's saying is they can live with maybe 2 to 3 months, maybe. But our question would be is, when we went through this before, the port has said we have 5 tie-up spaces available at Port Dock 5 for boats that aren't going to be able to tie up at the terminals when it ships in. We have 3 spaces available at Port Dock 3, and we have 1 space available at Port Dock 1.
Yeah, see, I don't...
9 boats. And we actually asked the port at that time, where are these spaces? Can you identify them? Because you're going to need 600 feet here, you're going to need 300 feet here, and you're going to need 100 feet here. And the port couldn't identify the spaces. So during these times, especially in November, December, and January, which is your worst weather months, you don't want these boats at Port Dock 5.
No, we don't.
Plus, I think anybody using Port Dock 5 is going to say, there's no room at Port Dock 5.
No, there's not.
Port Dock 5 wouldn't be able to support the weight of these boats. So you're going to have some damage. So I think those are the times you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do. And I believe that in the past, we have shuffled boats before. And it's worked. And we can do it. But right now, the port has moved more and more fishing gear up to the terminals because this Port Dock 7 hoist dock is being used more for live fish buying and other things. So we're now, all the shrimp gear and everything's moving up to the terminals. So we're now loading more gear up there than we ever did in the past. So that's taking up more space.
That's right.
So we have to take that into consideration. And so that's where, when we drew up this platform, the needs of the commercial fishing industry, we gave up a lot when we drew this up. It wasn't something that we said, well, we absolutely need this area because we aren't using it. We went back and we looked at it, and through all the fisheries, that's what we came up with. So, what I'm trying to get at here is, if you say maybe 2 to 3 months they can live without, so if we figure 2 months, how are you going to logistically do that? Is it going to be the worst times of the year, November, December, and January, when that mortgage is desperate, or spring?
Go ahead.
Well, I think, excuse me, I think 3 months is what we've been talking about. That we have to maintain that commitment to you all for those 3 months that we would not have a barge here. So I think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and as far as, the only thing I can tell you is that just what they suggested, which is 2. They might be able to do it without 3. So to me, I take people at their word. If he says we might be able to do without 3, then it's a matter of, all right, well, let's talk about that some more. But we're not at the point where we can talk to him more because we're just not quite there. So
Clint, just a second. But we have more than 3 months down here on the paper.
right.
Okay.
But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Clint.
Have they indicated how many times a year they want to ship?
It'd be once a month. Yeah, once a month. So it'd be about 48 hours a month we'd have a barge in.
And then during the other times, they'll be loading logs up onto this.
Yeah, they'll be stacking them up, in that 3.5 acre, about 10 trucks a day, accumulating an inventory of logs so they can get enough to load a barge, once a month is what it would look like.
And so will there be longshoremen up there? Parking?
Has to be.
Parking issue.
Yeah, they're definitely, I don't know how the labor thing looks right now. That was something I asked about, and he said he hadn't figured it out yet. So I don't know what that looks like. But in any case, like you said, you're asking the time that you're asking for during these times. You got, and I've gone off of this a lot. You got space for 12 catcher vessels to more. Mike, the question I ask myself is, do we have this during even those times? And I think we do. When you need them, it looks to me like we do.
Right now we're pretty full up there, but we also have 6 vessels upriver at least that would usually be tied up there.
And they will be here pretty soon.
Right. I think some of them have started coming back. So let's go to the audience. Dean, you had your hand up?
Yeah. When we were looking at, I was on the court before looking at the laying of logs, and I'm kind of curious. 48 hours seems amazing to be able to load and unload a barge that quick. And that laydown area, does that mean, are we going to hot load that, where the trucks are just coming in and loading? Or is that going to be taken up for a long time, where it's stacked with logs for months? I'm kind of confused on that, if you could clarify.
Do you want me to go into that, or?
We've had very limited conversations to understand that fully. I don't think they're hot loading. I think they're stockpiling, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is they come in, pull them off the truck, scale them. They wouldn't be doing any debarking. They'd sort them and put them in piles, each day and accumulate a load, and then it would go to the barge.
So it would sit there quite some time. You're not sure how long.
Year round, basically.
That's my point. Thank you. Is there'd be logs there all the time.
Right. Yeah, there would be some quantity, and it would grow through the month, and it would shrink when the barge gets loaded. But if we, like I said, if we tell them we got we got 3 months here where we need you to, stop that, and we're going to need that space. That's the concept that I got in my head.
That's our assumption about it at this point.
I don't mean to take another one, but you mentioned debarking. Is that going to happen at all?
No.
No.
Terry.
I don't know, I've been around the towboat business my whole life. These guys must be a lot better than the guys I was around. They were always late getting here, or the weather held them up, or they didn't get loaded right. So when they give you 48 hours, it may only take 48 hours to load the vessel, but they may call you to set up for a date 2 days, 3 days in advance, and then the weather and the loading on the other end fouls up. So you need to iron out exactly what the 48 hours consists of and what the variables are and how long that variable is if you're going to do it. Because if you have a variable of weather of a loss of 2 days or loading time taking 2 days, it's not 48 hours. It's longer than that. You need to have that space available.
Yeah, and what you're describing is the situation that's common to everybody who lives in the maritime world. I mean, we all live and die by the weather. And so everybody's schedule revolves around the weather, generally speaking, and it's something that fishermen and towboaters would like, and people at the port, I think, understand that it's a bad idea to put a schedule on so rigid that you can't adjust it by weather.
Well, you just have to, when you set up the contract, you set up these are the days that you anticipate to be there from the 16th to the 18th. But you need to set a window. The problem with the fishing industry is they have to move in advance. And then if something goes wrong and gets fouled up, you're going to have to offer a good park man up there to be able to do that and be able to get the fleet willing to work with them.
And I think we got that.
Get it in the contract.
John?
I have one question, maybe Sarah can answer this. After doing a bit of midwater fishing all up and down the west coast here, I find that places to work on midwater nets are kind of a premium. You can have enough room to be able to work on midwater nets all summer long and that sort of stuff.
Spoke with Aaron about that the first go around and stuff, and that too has changed since this document was. Now the rockfish fishery is opened up, and some of the local boats are. We're doing midwater fishing 12 months a year now, all of a sudden, instead of matching these times. And so we need the long stretch, and I think that if that set aside doesn't go all the way up into the road, that we could still get a stretch down like what we do. It just wouldn't be in the same spot, unless I'm mistaken. But we were talking about leaving, because we did, just in the summer, with the hake fishery and the rockfish fishery guys, we did 27 midwater nets out there this summer, spring, and fall. So, and it goes to the one-stop shop here in Newport that we all have this expertise. If we can't, if we don't have room, then it diminishes the stuff. But I think that Aaron and I have talked about that enough that we're aware of the stretch that we need.
Yeah, I think it's, it even says in here it's year round is what we'd be talking about, providing that space. So I figured it was like 700 to 1,000 feet long, and somewhere around about 10 feet wide or 15 to 20 feet wide, 10 to 20 feet wide.
Yeah, 20 is better.
Yeah, that would be best.
The mother in me thinks about safety issues with that, of having people lined up along the road and having log trucks going by.
I grew up right over here. It was no big deal. That
Okay.
whole place was full of logs.
Yeah.
The whole area was full of logs for my whole life growing up. Nobody got run over.
Great
Hey,
tips.
I'm a mom, I can't help it.
But there's no reason that we can't get more ecology blocks or Jersey barricades or something like that. I mean, we can do.
Well, I mean, if it takes up space, limited space, if they think it works, then.
I have another thought. What about cleaning the parking lot with pavement? Because logs will make a mess. There will be a lot of bark dust, which will mess with you.
Oh, believe me, we have had great experience with our dust. And
Yeah.
it's events. You can't have that crap blowing in our faces. I mean, it's a particular matter.
Can't
Well,
have it in
if
my
the
storm
truck's coming and
system
going, it's
either.
going to be an issue.
Yeah.
And it's I think what's different nowadays than what was back then is it's an issue for us too, because we got to keep it out of our storm drains. And it's one of the things that our stormwater permit is. We're permitted for log activity, and it's one of the hardest permits to get, as I understand, as far as stormwater goes. But he did mention, they wanted to make sure we had space available for a sweeper and a water truck so they could keep it clean. He said, and they're very concerned about that as well, because nowadays it's on the property owner as much as it is the operator. So DEQ, if they have a problem with with anything, they will go after the property operator and us equally. So, and usually I think they start at like $26,000 a day for the first fine. So it's definitely a motivator to keep yourself clean.
David?
Yeah, that was a good point that brought up, because the last time the port did this, it was a horrific mess. It was terrible. There was no cleanup. Matter of fact, it ended up costing the port $93,000 when it was all over with. And that was just two barges coming in and unloading logs.
What would they have to do? What was it that made them $96,000?
They didn't clean up their mess.
Huh.
They didn't clean up the bark at all. There was huge piles of bark. It ended up being the port having to clean it up at their cost. Also, the fact is that the pavement overlay up there, the last time they did it, they completely destroyed the asphalt. And so when we did a remediation of the terminal in 2008, it cost us another, I think it was $70,000 or $73,000 to repave and overlay that. So it's a real thin overlay in that area, in that 3.3 acres.
It's already shot, right?
Yeah, so you're going to have to really, in your lease, however you do it, that, that needs to be repaired eventually, because otherwise you're going to get left with the bill on that. There goes your profits.
Yeah.
So if profits is what you're after, you're going to have to be really aware of these things when you go into a lease.
Right.
And the bark dust was really bad up there because of the northwest wind, in the summertime it would dry up. It was really bad. And then the other issue is, just getting back to the timeline. We know that is for the larger vessels, November, December, and the first week in January is extremely important. I mean, there's no other place to tie those boats up.
Yeah.
You just can't physically do it.
Right.
We're aware.
And they aren't going to fit. There's not enough space just to double tie and make them all work up there.
Right.
So they're going to end up on Port Dock 5 or Port Dock 3, which if you went down there right now and looked, I don't think you could really vision one of those or 3 or 4 of those boats tied up down there.
Yeah.
And so as we're looking at the schedule, we need to look at if we need to fall back, what are we talking about? I mean, we need to know, is it 2 months, is it 3 months? I think that we're all here want to work towards this because we want to see the port make money off of it.
Well, what's the timeline? What's the process now from your perspective?
Well, go ahead. That's probably your question.
Flip. We wouldn't expect, so the next step is to take the information from today's meeting back to another conversation with the shipper and see if we're assuming 3 months is necessary for your operations here. And we respect that, and I believe that in my conversation, I said that pretty directly. And so I don't see us vacillating from that. I think that the next step then is to have a conversation about the feasibility, which is what we wanted to roll out today, and see where we go from there. And the original discussion, I think, was that this wouldn't start up until March at the very earliest, or spring. I don't even know if it was March specific. I think it was...
Boy, I'd like it if it started after May 15th would be easiest for me, so...
because it would be... that wouldn't be really smooth if you start and stop, so quickly like that. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think what he was saying was spring anyway. I don't think he gave us a specific date. So, and I think this is extremely conceptual in terms of exactly what they're trying to do on their end as well. So I think that there's a lot of discussion to be had in this next step of discussions, this next iteration of things.
The question that he had asked was, "Is this even feasible?" That's what they're looking. They're like, "Is this even feasible or what?" And I said, "Well, looks like it, but I need to bounce it off a bunch of people."
So that's why we're here, is just to test that.
David?
Well, I think it's feasible. I think it can work. It just depends on as we carry through with this process.
Right.
This is a far better process than what we ended up with last time. Last time, the port was making secret agreements. They were going behind closed doors. It was very non-transparent. Nobody knew what was going on. And by the time all the documents and paperwork was done and getting ready to sign, then they came in and said, well, what are we going to do?
Right.
And by then, the fishing industry was put behind everybody else. And so when we came forward and made our statements and said, look, you're the port, you know what we need. Why aren't you standing up for us also? And so we had to sit there and negotiate our own points into it, which the shipping companies said, no, we can't live with that at that time because they'd already been told that they were going to get fixed. And so now this is a totally different and this is a more comfortable atmosphere to deal in because we are included. So I think we can...
So I'd like to hear a little bit more too from you guys in the audience that use the space, what you think about this approach and willing to have more conversations about it. Is it feasible? Gene?
The Port of Newport has a public perception that it's floundering in indecision. So I think if we can come together with some kind of a decision, and work with the logging companies, I think we'd be hit and win for everybody.
Jim?
I think from my perspective, the two windows of opportunity to work the dock, the April, May timeframe, November, December, January timeframe, if we can get those pretty much to ourselves and a place to work on midwater nets, it's long enough to really work. I think the rest of the details can be worked out as far as, how you work around it, or you tie, those things. But still, it boils down to the fact that there's no other place to tie the big boats. Period.
And I totally agree with Jim and most everything that's been said here, but this time of year is critical for us. There's just no other place for us to go. I know it's been said many times, but from my boat owner's standpoint, you see what's going on up there now. So it's critical for us. And April, May is just almost as much. So.
I've got a question about, for you guys that participate in cod in the Bering Sea, that season's getting shorter and shorter. So before you were coming back in April, will you be coming back sooner? No.
They still get that April 1 opener, so everybody's going to hang around probably until they change that. Fleet's going to hang around up there, take the April 1 opener and back in the lake. That's about the size of it. And the only other comment is I don't know how the Romney's group's working into this. I don't know if they're going to provide facilities that the port can or can't provide, in the future. Do you have any idea what they can provide?
Well, Evans talked about maybe sometime putting docks in the future. He said that was like a phase 3 component, and of course it costs a lot of money. But I think they've envisioned something like that in the future.
I was more thinking about the area for network than dock.
Be worth talking to Evan.
And Heather, just real quick, to your point, Jim, I think the port and Evan have been working really closely on the development of this, certainly of late. And I think even though that's not the port's project, we recognize the importance of bringing those two properties together. It's sort of, and he's been, like you said, more than willing to work with us and provide information to us up front about this so that we can move forward together, I think, on that, so we can take those kinds of things into consideration. It's been a good relationship.
Terry?
One of the players, I don't think anybody's here, but in the future, you're going to have back wave here. You got $50 million already from DOE. The research keeps going on for the wave energy industry. I think you should reach out and at least make an available seat on this group for pack wave. They're going to need space. I think Evan's talking to them, thinking that they can maybe incorporate more research space on his dock, but somebody needs to talk to Packway because they're going to need space when they do research. I think there'll be variable space, but it should be involved.
Could they use the docks across the bay for research of this?
I think the equipment's going to be so big they can't.
So that brings up a good question. So if, for me, say this works out, we can get it going, and they're operating there year-round, except for 3 months, does that mean that you are not open for any other shipping? I mean, that would make us pretty fully subscribed, and then they would be locked into that spot. Like, does that mean you wouldn't have room for wave energy and the research boats? Have you thought about the other pieces or other?
I definitely have.
We've talked a bit about that, but
it's hard. I wouldn't say that we're not, but it really depends on what they're doing and what their needs are, and how we can squeeze it in, or if we can. I think one of the points about this whole thing that I think is really helpful for us is it gets us used to really having to squeeze. It puts us through the exercise of managing things much tighter, because that's what's going to be needed in the future when those guys come in. And as we've talked in the past about what's going on at the terminal, what will happen at the terminal, the wave thing has always been floating around in my head because sometimes they have some pretty big equipment that they, but it's definitely something we want to be aware of. In the meantime, in this agreement, whatever it would look like, I don't see it being a long, the way the tariff is written is on that 3.3 acres is it's real heavy on temporary arrangement. It's not like a, super long-term thing. So I'd like to give it a whirl in a short time frame and see how that goes, and then adjust it as it needs to, or whatever we got to do. So
versus the 20-year.
Yeah, because that's specifically the tariff is written against that type of thing. It says we're not supposed to turn over the terminal to some, operations of the terminal to some entity. So.
Other comments? So does this need to be updated then, Sarah? Does it meet the mid-water net?
Yeah, we think that I just was wondering, on the dock page, was there a heavy load spot that was put in?
Nothing wrong with bringing that up.
Heavy loads, I remember that was a discussion. So would the dock be able to handle that kind of?
Yes.
I missed that. I'm sorry.
The heaviness of
At one point in the building the dock, they were going to do an extra heavy duty load area for extra heavy duty loads, and that evidently wasn't.
That was when we were agreeing still.
Yeah.
That's when we were going to have sewer and everything else out there. So anyway, that didn't happen, Sarah.
Yeah.
It's all rated the same.
It's still.
Yeah, but it's adequate. I mean, it's rated for our.
I have a question. Is there any set, it's been so many years since a bar just came in and out here to speak of on a regular basis. Is there set tug lanes for coming and going? Because there's nothing worse on crab here than bar just driving through strings. Guys have heads up as to how they're going to get out to their 40 fathom place. Or are they just going to willy-nilly every time they come and go?
So that there's an agreement. You guys know about the agreements that are in place. I think enforcing it is the key to that. So if you guys run into problems, let us know, and we'll do whatever we possibly can to make sure that.
There will be problems.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
To try to head off those problems with communications beforehand. So I had Terry's got to stand up and then.
So when they developed the wave energy site, Bob Eder and a bunch of the crabbers worked a long time to get the towboats lanes moved and define them more narrowly. So probably should talk to the guys that actually worked with them hand in hand. But and then we'll probably have to. I mean, if you're going to take a chance if you're going to be in that area, because if we have regular towboats, you know that you're going to get whacked if you're in there. But what I understood was in order to make the turn that they had to make around the wave energy site, they had to clip off an end of it and tighten the lanes a little bit. So I think you need to talk to Bob Eder on that one and find out exactly what all went on in the negotiation.
Terry's right on that because those were just ratified again. I think it was last year or the year before.
Right.
It was just fairly recently. But that's just not the only issue. The other issue is the recreational end of it. The recreational end is just as big because you go out of here any time in the summer and you got sport crab pots clear across the channel, all the way out past the Whistler, anywhere out through there is. And so you're going to have to face the recreational end of it, which I think is going to be more daunting. And if you get a boat out there and get people to clear their crab gear out of the way, or lose it, I guess. Lose it.
I think, yeah.
Because that's happened in the past. That's just what happens. But, I just certainly hope that the court approaches this differently than last time. Last time, even though they were all set to sign agreements, there was still such disarray on how the activity was going to take place at the dock. It was insane. I mean, the people up there, we had Pete Zurich. He had no idea what the fencing requirements were going to be. He had no idea what type of traffic pattern to organize. It was total disarray, and we're ready to sign 20-year leases. So this is a far more positive approach, and I hope it just keeps going down this road because this interaction is going to be what's needed, and I think that we can revise this. I think that we can work hard to make this work.
Yeah, I would echo David's comments. I've really appreciated getting the information, knowing what's going on, being able to share it with the customers of the port ahead of time instead of after the fact. So thank you guys for doing that. So I think on this particular topic, what we'll do, well, I'll ask the committee, but I think what we need to do is update it to make sure it reflects the usage of the crabbers, the shrimpers, the people that are stretching out nets. Bill, you've been quiet. I don't know if you see anything in here that impacts the meal plan or not, but we'll want to make sure. We had something down saying 12 months out of the year should be clear route for trucks to access the fish meal plant.
Well, I mean, when we talked about this before, it was 40 or 50 trucks a day.
Right.
10 trucks a day is much better to deal with.
Okay. And then for this whole meeting, just sort of recall what the committee does is we talk about things at the port that impact us in the port, and then we make recommendations to the Port Commission. And I would envision that we could make our recommendations to you at your work, maybe at the work session that's coming up, instead of waiting till the January meeting. So that, as these, so we don't put a hold on your discussions with the potential shipper.
And can I just insert that it looks like that work session is going to be January 2nd at noon.
Terry, one more point that I think you mentioned that the shipper was also willing to come chat with people as well.
Right.
And this has not been a one-sided slam it down your throat. I think this person's very much open and appreciates the situation. So that's an option going forward too.
I think that's a good idea, actually.
Are these people already in business? Are they hauling logs now?
Yeah.
No. Just want to make sure they weren't fly-by-nighters.
Apparently they're gluttons for punishment.
You're right.
Okay, anything else on this topic, or we got other stuff to get through? So, next we have just an update on the Port Dock 5 pier replacement.
Sure. First and foremost, I would very much appreciate getting letters of support for funding for the project. We can use as many of those as we can possibly get. Right now, I've got about 18 folks that have said they're going to give us letters of support, but the more of those that we can get, the better. The permits, Army Corps permits done, state permits are in. So the project's basically ready to go. The final plans, I'm still just finalizing those with our engineers right now, but they'll be done any day. And so the Port Dock 5 pier will be ready to get rebuilt. As most people are aware, the pilings are pretty much hollow. They're holding that thing up. It's in real bad shape. It needs to be rebuilt. We don't want to lose the access down to the docks, nor do we want to lose the fuel and the electricity and the water lines that are carried on that thing. So we're in the grant submission phase right now, trying to get funding for it. So the grant documents are all but ready to go. I'm just waiting on as many letters of support I can get. So if anyone is willing to draft a letter of support, anybody whatsoever, please let me know. I'll send you a packet of information that has a lot of statistics on the fishing industry and the project itself. The overall picture, I think there's three main points that are effective to make here. That's the importance of the commercial fishing industry in Newport as it relates to the region. And one of the most compelling statistics that I have seen the county has produced is that commercial fishing and aquaculture account for 50 to 54% of personal income in this county. And that's over about the last 10 years or so. So you put that together with the fact that a lot of those boats that we've just talked about this morning are moored down there at Port Dock 5, and Port Dock 5 is basically the heart of the commercial marina. Then you put those two facts together, and it really reiterates the fact that this piece of infrastructure is critical to the region's economy. And that's the point that we want to make, I think, when we're seeking funding for it. It's not just a matter of replacing an old dock. It's a matter of keeping an industry going and situating the marina so that we could potentially add to it in the coming years, because as we've talked about, there's not enough moorage. We don't have enough room. And there's more boats that want to come in. So that's pretty much where we're at on it. It's a $2.4 million project. The grant that we're seeking right now is an EDA grant that would fund 50% of it. So the port would be on the hook for the other 50% unless we can line up another grant. But season for those isn't quite open yet. And as soon as they do open, then we'll seek those as aggressively as we possibly can.
Terry?
So if you'll send me a copy of the letter, I'm going to be done on the 7th, but if you'll get me a draft as soon as you can, you just need a draft. I'll redo it and put it back in your packet, because that kind of county and city is essential to getting a lot of these grants. We should be able to do that.
Absolutely. We appreciate it.
Did you get Spencer to address that already?
Did we have that? It's on our list. I can't. We've been having conversations with Spencer, and I can't recall if we made that ask yet or not.
We're going to chat with him.
That's
between
right.
Christmas and New Year's.
That's right.
So related to this, if you don't mind, I'll extend another comment. Heather, you came to me and asked, and you didn't get the money from the economic development. We sat down yesterday in the public meeting, the county commission, and basically told them to do it. We've got money around the outside, so we're looking for matches of these kinds of economic studies like what you proposed. So if you'll get your money, if there's any idea, Wayne, we'll work it out. We'll get there.
Great, thanks, Terry. So just so everybody knows, we're MTC went out and hired the research group who's done a lot of economic reports for the county, the state of Oregon, to do a deep dive on what commercial and recreational fishing brings, not just to the Port of Newport, but to the community, the county, and the state. Because I think we've done kind of a really bad job of telling our story. And this is going to help us be able to back up when we talk about how much we contribute. And that's going to be helpful with people going with the port, the city, and others going after grants. And we're going to make it available, of course, for everyone. In fact, we've asked the city to partner with us. They haven't given an answer yet on that. So, Dietmar, I don't know if you can help with that. We've asked the port also if they would partner, and the county, and because it's really something that we can all use moving forward, and it's information that we really need. So that's ongoing. It's about halfway finished right now, so we're hoping to have that done before the end of January.
So let me mention one other thing. Don't be afraid to ask the Siletz tribe for their grant funds. We have the best relationship right now of any tribe and county in the country. And they may turn you down, but at least they have that kind of funds available directed toward economic development that you may be able to access. A simple letter may get you there.
Anything else on Port Doc 5? Any questions or comments? For those of you that are MTC members, I am writing a support letter for this project, and we'll list out all the vessels that are members in that support letter so that you can see the breadth of support.
Hey Heather, would you send me a draft of yours when you're done? Maybe I can do it first run producers.
Sure. Next, commercial marina electrical infrastructure updates.
Yeah, this was something I asked to put on the agenda because, especially as we've been working on that Port Dock 5 pier project, it should be a simple cutover of power, once the pier is done to the docks. But we're finding it's not going to work that way because the breaker box that feeds Port Dock 5 is over capacity right now. So the transformer up on the sidewalk is at max capacity. And then everybody's generally aware, I'm sure, that uses the pedestals down there, what kind of shape they're in. They're obsolete and old, in definite need of replacement. I think what we need to do is figure out a way to get that done in short order. I was hoping to be able to try and pull that off in the next 3 to 5 years, and I think that's apparent because of the state that we're finding as we start digging into things more and more engineering-wise. So one of the ideas that I had, obviously, we seek grants for this stuff. We get our strategic business plan update done, and we'll do better in competition for grants. But another idea that I had was if we consider figuring out, I've got somebody coming down to give us an estimate that we can budget toward on what that project would cost, and if we considered over the course of like 3 or 5 years, paying for that through some sort of rate increase, possibly. I wanted to bring that up and start talking about that because I remember how the rate discussion went last year, and one of the biggest problems I think the port had was that we didn't, what I've heard from people since I've been here is that you guys have seen rate increases for years and years and years, and very little investment back into the infrastructure. And so my idea would be to figure out what our target is to pay for the electrical, to get this electrical work done, and do some sort of incremental increase over a number of years, and then take those funds and put it into a fund that is restricted somehow or another, so that the Port Commission can take that money and invest it directly back into what you guys need. And that's my idea, but I just wanted to bring it up.
Can I make a suggestion with the pedestals, or just, if you guys are going to replace all those, if you could put pedestals that have 4 outlets in them instead of 2,
Yeah.
that would help immensely.
And 50 amp, right? That's what we want.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be great.
That's what we want to do.
Yeah, you got to replace the box out on the street anyway. Overbuild.
So right now, are you looking for feedback on what?
I wanted to see if people think that's a decent approach to going about getting funding for that type of work. It's not, and the reason why I wanted to see is because the port doesn't seem to have really done that in years past. There's a lot of things that we charge for, but taking those extra and putting them into a fund for that actual work, it seems I've heard that from people, and I think it's decent. Yeah,
That'd be like a temporary surcharge for itemized project.
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Well, it's like taxes, it never becomes temporary. You can, just take the temporary out. And it has been discussed, and it's been looked at, the issues you're raising, and I think it's really positive, because besides just seeing, a big rate increase on mortgages, and just seeing it going into the black hole of the general fund, which really consumes a lot of it because of your rising insurance costs, everything is rising. I mean, you can add 3% on everything you do every year. That's going to be the cost of doing business. So even if you do earmark this certain amount of your mortgage for upgrading electrical and this and that, that's a positive thing. But then you also have to remember that you're going to have to raise it a little bit more to cover what your general fund expenses. So you're going to have to add that in there too. So if you look at it, and it'd be easy for you to put together. You can say, okay, here's your cost. You're going to extrapolate your cost of your upgrades over so many years. This is what your percentage increase will be every year on mortgage, but a certain percentage of that is going to have to continue to go to the general fund to offset your costs of what they are today and into the future. So I think what you need to do is just put together that spreadsheet and bring it and say, hey, this is what it's going to look like. Is it going to be 3% a year, 5% a year?
Yeah, I don't know. And so what I picture in my mind is that we would use the incremental increase to go in the fund, but what we need to do is we really need to tighten up on spending in our budget, and everybody loves to hear that internally, but we haven't really had the controls, I don't think, to be able to do that. We're implementing these a procurement policy now that will enable us to have tighter, there'll be greater responsibility, but also tighter control over exactly what we're spending on, and we would have to kind of arrest our spending at a 2018 rate or something like that, whatever year it started, so that the additional revenue accounting for what we think the increase is going to be for that project over those years, would cover it, hopefully. And then we go out for grants.
Yeah. It's work you put together, and saying this is what the cost of the upgrade would be. This is what the cost mortgage increase would be extrapolated over a certain period of years. But you're also going to have to add in the cost of day-to-day business that goes into the general fund.
Right. Yeah, we just project that out over a series of years. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Did you say how much it was going to cost?
I don't know yet. So pedestals are $1,000 a piece. So you can figure we got 55 pedestals. That's $55,000 just in parts for the pedestals alone, and then all the conductors. And there's a lot of wire that's got to be laid out. So it's going to be, I'm guessing. But by the time you factor in labor and a couple other infrastructure changes we're going to need to make to do it, I bet it's probably $400,000, maybe $5. And I might be real light on that. I don't know.
Well, and another thing to look at while you're doing that is, is our old lighting system has failed on the docks. LED lighting has come in since that time. It's made a huge difference in a lot of ports that have gone to LED. But also you'll see on the docks at night, with the lack of lighting, a lot of boats are leaving their deck lights on. They're leaving more lights on their boats at night, which is a cost to the port.
Yeah.
I always do.
Yeah.
Just for that reason.
It just loads more on our electricity.
Absolutely, the port's paying for that.
Right,
Big
right.
cost coming off Port Dock 5, so as you're looking at this lighting issue, you might look at being able to light the docks so boats don't have to leave all their lights on at night just so they have lighting.
Yeah, we were thinking it. So the pedestals that we were considering, they have lights in them. I just, what I want to do is look at what that, because they got figures for you take how many lumens each light is, and you can tell how much and I think we got to look at that so that nighttime the docks can be seen. It's safer, cheaper.
Any other committee comments? So is our recommendation then that Aaron and the port staff put together a spreadsheet that looks at what the cost would be and what the potential rate increase would be over a certain amount of time, and bring it back to the committee to take a look at? Or
I'm going to put that information together and I'll put it out as wide as I can.
So I do have a question though. It appears that the least we need to do is replace a transformer and a power box.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be an additional. It's either that or we're going to lose. So what we would lose in order so that we can get a stamp on those plans is we would lose 8 breakers, and I know how tight we already are. So it's 8 of the individual breakers down on the pedestals themselves. So it'd be 8 less power cords you can plug in order to get it underneath what the capacity is on that panel.
So is Port Dock 5 the only infrastructure that's on that transformer?
On that one,
yeah.
I believe it is. I'm not positive on that as I sit here right now, but I'm nearly sure that it is.
Well, if it's not, you got a cost sharing that you can take into effect on your price too.
Yeah, because I even know the fuel dock, I'm pretty sure is on a different one.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, and so I think it's the only thing that's running it.
okay. The next agenda item is the international terminal parking. Don looks like he had to deal with something. Are you prepared to talk about it?
Sure. He was just he brought up this year, especially during this busy season. He's had some issues with vehicles parked, and he didn't know whose they were, didn't know how to get them moved or anything like that. And he just reiterated that we should at least have parking passes out there, just the same as everywhere else in the port. That way he knows who's who, and they got a business being there. And so that was the only thing.
So that if you had a parking, a lot of those boats might already have parking permits if they park out here.
Mm-hmm.
But so you can look on the permit and then do something that tells you.
Yeah, you can get
who
your
owns
phone
it.
numbers.
Okay.
So anyway, it was just a point of he had called me one day in the middle of doing 20 different things. It was like, we got to do this because it's a real problem for me. So
Is it worth just reiterating to folks not to park where they're not supposed to park?
oh, that would be great too. If we get captains to talk to their deckhands about it, it'd probably help
And in
them.
front of everyone, I'll come clean and say the other day I went out the one way and Kent was coming down, and I was so embarrassed.
Busted.
I go backwards.
I thought about calling TCB.
I know, I was like, oh, shoot. Yeah,
I've gotten feedback often on the one way. Someone's going to get killed. You switch it back to 2-way. And I said, we've learned to change our behavior. So, I mean, people they're saying someone's going to get killed because everyone bombs down there. Now there's one way. And then people like that are going the wrong way. And anyway, I don't know. I wish Don were here. I don't know if that's.
Well, there's just less of a chance of it happening now than there used to be, but still, it doesn't slow anybody down. Anyway.
Well, and if we move into some kind of a shipping arrangement, I think we're going to want to.
We're gonna have to address
Yeah.
traffic patterns
Yeah.
and stuff anyway.
Yeah.
And you may, right now, in terms of parking, just you guys remind your crews not to just leave their trucks parked where they're not supposed to be parked.
This guy actually was parked where they was told to park. John just didn't know whose it was, and he was starting to stack in
Oh,
crap
okay.
here, and he couldn't. The truck sat there for forever.
Well, that's why if you have a parking permit, at least somebody can find out the number and call them.
That's what happened. I mean, the guy was technically where he's supposed to be originally, but when the crab used started coming in.
So what's the instance?
knows who it was.
So if we're talking parking passes, what if you don't have a parking pass? How are you handling that?
Well, we got, really, we should, if it's a problem, we got signs and we can tow folks is what we can do.
Well, yeah, the problem is a lot of us don't even, I don't have a parking pass. I haven't had one for years. I don't use the terminals.
I thought you only needed one for down here.
Well, that's
commercial fishing license. So
It's just a really nice thing to have for during up there. I imagine it'd be mostly day use too, but I mean, it's nice to know who belongs to a vehicle in case that something does come up where you have to have somebody move.
So let's just do it instead of a charge for the terminal pass. These will be a different pass system, right?
No, I don't. I think what I figured is it'd be the same passes because then if you're working down here, then and you work. What's that?
They don't work down there.
Well, there's.
I've tried to go there and they won't give me one.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I don't have a commercial fishing license.
I managed two of my yards closed and they won't even give me one.
So you guys gonna have.
Did they say? So what's the reason? What is it?
I gave up going in there.
Yeah.
But do you know what the reason was that they gave you?
Commercial fishing license.
Okay. All right. Well, see, then there's a procedural thing that we probably ought to look at and figure out.
The reason why commercial fishing licenses were put on there was to preserve the spaces for
Commercial fishermen.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. So there's a reasoning for it. So when you're thinking through this, Aaron, you got to think through that process also. The terminals is used with a whole different use than what these parking spaces are used for.
Right.
So you're going to have to think through that one a little bit, I think. But I think parking enforcement, I mean, if Don's up there, we can designate areas and slowly work into those areas are used. Nobody parks on the dock face unless they're unloading gear. Then they move to the parking spaces.
Yeah, we could get a different permit for up there that would also be good for down here too. I mean, so it would just
I'm not a
overlap.
commercial fisherman. I drive down to the docks.
Service vendors need access.
It's a
How that works
bit.
for vendors.
All right. You're going to have to think through this one a little bit.
Well, there's a million ways to skin a cat. We'll figure it out. That's why it's helpful for me to bring it up here because I can hear stuff like that and we'll get the problem solved.
So
So
we talked about that years ago too, Dave, and I don't know where it ended up changing, but it did change. Somebody made a decision somewhere along the way to not give them to vendors a few years ago.
Well, a vendor's not going to go park on the terminal and leave their truck there.
Oh, but they park it in front of the yellow gate on Dock 5.
Oh.
But I did, yeah. I would take deliveries down on Dock 5.
So let us consider some of this stuff and
we'll figure it out.
make a recommendation about that. Yeah.
I just want to say that one-way sign, the sign's not marked very, it's not a very big sign down there.
No, it's not.
So
Get one of them big ones.
if you're going to get
Yeah.
serious about it,
Yeah, that's the thing. We got to get serious about it. Yeah,
more dangerous now than it was.
right.
Well, and you guys were running over the sign when Doug was there, my understanding. You complained about it.
This is his
You
picture.
guys have a meeting.
Now.
Rather than taking up time here at a meeting, especially before that, because it's going to get pretty complicated. And it's going to take some thinking through to have a meeting just for the parking itself. Would be nice.
Okay. We had a resignation from the committee. Ernie Phillips sold his boat and he's no longer involved in commercial fishing. So if anybody knows someone who is a limited entry seller that wants to join, the commission is the one that appoints people that can spread the word. And then the last thing on here is legislative activities in Salem, and I'll just pass this around. Some of you have heard that a legislator from Eastern Oregon, from Hefner, put together a legislative concept that was drafted by ILWU to have the Port of Newport declared a Deepwater International Port and have it taken over by the state of Oregon. The state would dismiss the current commission and the governor would appoint the members of the commission. If you look at the makeup that's proposed in this legislative concept of the commission, fishing would have one seat, the longshoremen would have a seat, people involved in agriculture and timber would have a seat, but the way it works out is that fishermen, no matter what, only have one seat. So basically what this does is negates a local election and I consider it a hostile takeover of the Port of Newport. The intelligence that we have right now is that this has become a bill, so this is a legislative concept, is how it started, and we should know by the end of the week what committee that bill ends up in and where it's going to be heard. So for the Commercial Fishing Users Committee, I think a conversation about why this, in my opinion, is not a good idea, and a recommendation that goes to the Port Commission that the Port aggressively fight this and any other effort to take local control away from voters in the Port District. That's what we should pursue. At the same time, just for transparency's sake, Midwater Trawlers Cooperative is working to put together a coalition of folks, fishermen, recreational, commercial, the seafood processors. We're talking to bankers. We want to talk with people at the county, at the city, any businesses that are involved and make their living off fishing. Or just care about the port. Trying to put this coalition together that will fight against this particular bill. There's also a rumor there could be one or two other bills, and one of them may include a takeover of the Port of Astoria. So it turns out maybe we would have some allies in other places as well that we could work together. At the end of the day, I have a hard time believing that an elected official thinks it's okay to tell a bunch of people that their vote doesn't matter. I have a real hard time with that, regardless of the content of the bill. But beyond that, in my opinion, this is a hostile takeover of the Port of Newport, and I think it should be fought with everything that we have. But I'm open to hearing what other committee members think about that, and if you're comfortable making a recommendation to the Port Commission that they should fight this. Questions, comments, David?
Well, I'm backing Heather up on this. We've already made a lot of inroads into this in the fishing industry, I think, and we're going to continue as hard as we can. And our feeling isn't to sit around and wait, as we've been told in the past. Maybe we can amend this to better suit Newport. Amendments are out of our picture. We are not considering amendments of any type. Our push is to dissolve this and get rid of it and do what we have to do that. And we look at it as the same way as a hostile takeover of the Port of Newport. The Port of Newport's a unique port in what it provides and what it services. It's not Coos Bay. It's not the Port of Portland. And if you actually take a closer look at those ports, the state does control, and look at their books and consider how well they're doing, they aren't doing very well at all. And if you look at what Portland's struggling with, you look at what Coos Bay is struggling with, it's still there. And so we don't want, and plus if you look at how the state's running itself, I definitely don't want the Port of Newport to be ran like the state of Oregon. So we're going to fight this as hard as we can, and I'm going to take part in it, and I'm hoping that everybody will join in. I'm actually just hoping that the port would join in, and you're going to have a work session on it, I believe, so I think that that'll be well attended.
Jane, Bob, you guys have any questions or comments?
Well, the only thing I can think of is the fact that we don't have this kind of support we need for the port anyway. Our voting district is tiny, and a lot of people that are involved with the port can't even vote on certain aspects.
That'd be me.
So, until we can get compiled a little bit, I think it's a hostile takeover, or an accident one.
When you look at the 5 user groups, I can see the timber industry represented by 2 seats.
Yeah.
Who said that? And it's drafted by the longshoremen. So and I would point out that in the case of Coos Bay and in Portland, Coos Bay actually wanted the state to take them over. But even then, they weren't so prescriptive in the bill as to the background of each person that would sit on the commission. This is much more prescriptive than those were.
I think there's one thing you have to consider too, is Coos Bay is 2 pieces. When you talk about Coos Bay, Coos Bay doesn't have commercial fishing. Coos Bay doesn't have recreational fishing. Charleston does, which is underneath the port of Coos Bay. But Coos Bay itself, that was a timber town, mill town, was what caused all the chafe with the port. That's all it is. It's not. They have no commercial fishing. They have no recreational fishing. So that's just the point I wanted to make. So there is a huge difference.
And they have 1,100 industrial acres.
Yeah.
There as well. We have 6 developed. Other comments or questions? Are people, Terry?
So, this is the bill draft. You guys better take it serious. I think you can beat it. But you got to pay attention. There's a lot of bills introduced every year that don't go anywhere. This negotiation you're just talking about with the barge company, that's a good point. You guys say, we're willing to work, but that, you got to keep saying that contract that you got rid of was a bad contract. Because those people over there, they don't even understand who you are or what the fishing industry is doing. Because no one has any experience with it, and we don't do a very good job publicizing ourselves as a fishing industry. When you get over there and start talking to legislators, they think you're all gillners. Seriously, they have no concept of what you are or how big you are, and that you're the strongest point in this port. So you're going to start at ground zero, and that takes some activity. I think the bill gets laid to rest for several reasons. If you go over and pay attention, if you don't, and just let it slide, you may have a tiger on your hands that you can't stop. A little upfront work early in the session makes a big difference.
And I think a good point to make is one of the exercises we just went through here. We're looking at setting aside 3.3 acres, and what's it going to take to be able to do that? I mean, 3.3 acres. This is supposed to be a shipping port, and we're trying to figure out how to set aside a little postage stamp piece of property to get that going. Salem doesn't understand that. I've met with the Coastal Caucus with Heather. We've tried to explain this position before, but the port really needs to take on a position of what you have to offer and at what times you have to offer it. So the legislators really understand that. Because this isn't a new concept. This has been brought up by one other senator out of Salem in the past years ago. She always felt it would be in the best interest of the state to consolidate the ports together. This has been a concept in the past, and I do believe that if there's another bill laying out there, it will be coming from this senator, and that's what it'll be. It'll be consolidation of not just Newport, but another port, maybe another one, because it has been discussed in the past. So we need to get behind this, and I'm hoping this group will support getting behind it.
It's undermining the good progress that the port has made. There's no secret that the port has had some challenges, and what we've heard from legislators is that they need to get their act together. They have done that. I mean, the staff has been incredible. They've worked really hard. We have a general manager, interim general manager that's doing terrific. We have a commission that's actually functioning with 5 votes. And this activity in Salem is just undermining that. It undermines the search for a permanent GM. It just undermines any of the conversations that we're having with Teven or Chipper or whoever. So it's besides the fact that it negates local election results, which is really troubling. But I think that unless any committee members have concerns about making a recommendation to the Port Commission that they fight this strongly, I think we should do that. Anybody in the audience want to make any comments on it?
The coalition you were talking about putting together, what are you entailing that? One, obviously I'm 100%. You're part of that.
Yeah, I think a coalition of a cross-section of all different folks that care about the port, and then maybe even creating, years ago there was something called the Jobs Coalition that represented a whole bunch of different groups on a fishing topic. Just to have a unified voice, an organized voice in Salem. It's one thing for everybody individually to try to, first of all, navigating Salem is a challenge. If we can all speak with one voice, but we all represent different facets, whether it's banking, supply, the fuel, all these different people that care about the port, I think we can be effective. But it'll take a lot of work. I really appreciate your willingness to take the lead on that. But that's kind of the vision of it, you know, taking this economic study as well, and also just promoting the good things that the port is doing. They have not done a great job of sharing that. They're working on communicating that better to the public. Right now, the public makes up their mind because there's a vacuum of information about what's going on, and so they need to know that you know, the port's taken a lot of positive steps. We were at a low point, and right now the trajectory is going up, in my opinion, and so we need to support the port in that way. And I just can't imagine the state of Oregon that has screwed up so many different programs and wasted colossal amounts of money is the right answer to the port support. I reject that notion.
Heather?
Yeah.
Just a quick question. As both the shipping deal as well as this bill information transpired, one of the things you might want to talk about a little bit here is just that how effective is that flow of information on both those two issues from the port to your user group as well? You know, is it working? I mean, we've had this meeting, which I think is great. But I mean, it might be something for the group to consider so that they stay informed and the port gives them the information or makes it available, or we, you know, I want to make sure everybody knows what's going on as much as we can. And sometimes maybe we haven't done that as well in the past. How can we improve on it?
Well, my understanding is you have a new website that's going to be debuting soon. So.
January 1, and it won't be fully constructed, as they say, but Karen's working really hard on that in between a million other things. And it's very easy for us to post information. One thing I need to make really clear to folks is that port staff, because we are public employees, we cannot take a stance or an opinion on any political issues. And we can't work on or produce documents that are position documents. And so anything that's posted to our website will be just the facts, ma'am. It will be factual. And it's a new thing that I need to communicate clearly to all the port staff so they understand we can't wear buttons at work, or, you know, we can't do anything of a political nature. And so we have to be very careful because we know eyes are on us. And so we will be posting on the website the information about the bill and about what committee it's assigned to and what the meeting agenda is, so that people who want to testify or want to contact the committee members can do that. I mean, that's public information, it's factual. But anything that's opinion-based...
So I guess I want to just push back a little on that. And when the bond measure was passed in 2006, Yale Fogarty and I actually together were co-chairs of the committee that got that bond measure passed. And the port wasn't actively lobbying one way or another, but the port did submit a letter of support in the voters pamphlet signed by the commissioners.
The commissioners can. It's the staff. Elected officials can do almost anything they want. Almost. But it's the staff, because the staff are public employees. That's.
We don't have an opinion.
Not when you're on the clock. When you're, we could do things after hours or on our break and those kinds of things. I'm sorry, I wasn't specific enough.
That's my.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that information sharing is getting better, but I think it can be better still. It'd be nice to have press releases or something on a regular basis that's coming out from the port. The paper, the local press, has not done a terrific job of representing what's actually happening in the port. Really disappointed in some of these Lincoln County's stories. I think that they should be renamed Opinions of Dave Morgan instead of just Lincoln County. So I think when people don't have the information and they go to News Lincoln County or they pick
Right.
up the News Times, they really need to be getting accurate information, and that needs to come from you all. As
Yeah.
much as we put it out there, people say we're biased, and that's true, but doesn't mean we're not accurate. But you guys,
And we're working on that.
Yeah,
We're
need to do.
you're going to start seeing things on a regular basis from us. Yeah.
Isn't Justin's brother the new editor?
Yeager, Brett Yeager. I didn't know it was his,
Yeah,
his
it's his
brother.
brother. So we've got a little insight with the fisheries there. I know he's called me several times.
Good.
Info.
Something I had brought up before that we don't have the resources necessarily for it right now, but in this day and age, the media is sometimes not nearly as compelling as social media is. And so a skilled person with social media can oftentimes outpace all of those problems very effectively. The trouble is it's time consuming. And because you got to stay out in front of trolls and you have to be effective with it, and we just don't have the bandwidth to be able to do it. But it's something to keep in mind.
David.
Okay, so on the legislation end, I'd like to get a feel from this group, because I definitely believe this group should take a stance against this legislation, especially coming from a labor union that's tied up the Port of Portland, a labor union that's tied up the Port of St. Helens. I don't think there's any reason at all at this time. So I'm asking, do we have a forum today?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion, and my motion would be that the Commercial Fishing Users Group takes a position against legislation to control the Port District of the Port of Newport.
Takes a position.
Against legislation
Which
that
would take control away from
the Port
local.
District of the Port of Newport.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Did you get all
You
that?
seconded?
Ted, you want to discuss it anymore?
No, I think that's just a simple discussion that we move ahead in that. I mean, not that the group does, but the group makes that position to the Port of Newport.
Right.
But knowing that also that we're going to be, some of us are going to be working on this a lot.
Yeah.
So.
And we would welcome anybody that wants to join us.
Can I make a friendly amendment to this and see if he agrees with it? That a press release comes from the group. I can't make it formal. The press release
because we
comes
have to
from the group
abstain.
to say that it can get into paper. So you, people that say, here, you guys seriously.
I would make that amendment.
Okay. Do you accept that amendment?
But I just want to question that amendment a little bit, that we are a group that's part of the port.
I would need to check, I think, with Pete on just exactly how we would make that public.
Yeah, I don't think we're in a position of making press releases without information from the port.
That's a good question.
So I think I agree with you. It'd be better if it came from the Port Commission itself, your recommendation to the Port Commission. I apologize for making an amendment, but the idea of clearly notifying Salem you're serious.
Well, and another tweak to that, I mean, to what we're talking about here on a bigger scale, getting this information out to the media, there's no reason why a collection of folks can't submit this to the newspaper as well, or to other media sources, and certainly make this formal recommendation to the commission. I think that gets some of the way.
Outside of the use of
Yeah, I mean, getting the word out to the local paper, the local media, and shameless request here, but there's a lot of people that are vocal that find ways to look at the glass half empty with the port all the time, and I think this community needs to be reminded at times that the glass is half full. We're making some progress, and coming together in an opinion stance or a firm affirmation from a group like this, at the very least in the paper, would send a good message.
So I think at the users group, at the work session, I don't know if at that time they're going to take a report from this commercial fishing users group, but when the report is made to the commission, it will be public then, and it can then be put in any publication that's available.
Yes, okay. And then I'm thinking also about just a separate coalition maybe coming together and doing some press related stuff with that group, if that's separate.
I agree with that. But after, and I appreciate Terry's amendment, but I think at the time, after this is presented to the Port Commission, and it's accepted by them, then it's a public position, and then it can go into the press.
And may I ask for some clarity as to what the motion actually is at this point?
The motion is that the Commercial Fishing Users Committee.
Let me read you what I have, and you can tell me if I'm. So, motion that the Commercial Fishing Users Group Committee takes a position against legislation to take control of the Port District away from the Port of Newport.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I think I don't think we need to include in the motion the part about a press release, but we would, when we provide our report, we'll be asking for.
Right.
We need to specifically note the bill number too.
Well, actually, there might be two more out there that haven't been introduced yet, so I think it's best to say any legislation which takes control away from the Port District.
Or put that number in
Okay.
others or something like
And
that.
I amend that to say against any legislation.
Against any legislation.
Because right now, we don't know the bill number yet. That's a legislative concept, 291.
Yeah, it could
We
change.
know it became a bill overnight, but the number hasn't been introduced yet. It could be House Bill 291, but we don't know.
So Karen, did you know
They
that?
make it as difficult as possible to follow.
And then your second still covers any legislation?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I guess one of my questions would be, is there anybody out here that thinks it's a good idea? Asking the question.
Yeah.
I was going to make a comment, but we're being taped, so.
And then Heather, I just need to, for clarification and for the record purpose, just say that if any of the staff are considered members of, okay, good, then, all right, thank you. Then we would abstain.
Yeah, it is only
That's what I
staff
thought.
or commissioners are not members of the committee.
Okay, perfect.
There's a liaison, but she's not a formal
Yeah,
member.
that's, well, and she could vote in support if she wanted, but I just trying to keep it clean.
Also, in our regular meeting, we voted on a 5-0 to have Terry do a resolution and do wording, so this will help Terry.
Yeah.
Which I can't do now.
You can't.
We'll talk about it. I can't do that kind of work.
But it is very, just speaks to how complicated and orderly it really has to be.
So is there any objection to the motion? If not, that carries. Okay, is there any other topic or public comment that anybody wants to bring up?
Hey, Aaron.
David,
Yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead. Even on those pedestals, even if you went every other one with 4, I think that would be sufficient other than every one with 4.
Okay. Alrighty.
And you know, the Gillette's charitable contribution that Terry mentioned, that might be a good cause
Yeah.
to go after some money for that.
Absolutely.
David?
So the only comment I want to make for adjournment was that I did go to a commission meeting the other night, and I was really impressed with how the meeting was conducted and held and how it was carried through. And I'm not just trying to pull one person out to comment on them, but because I think the whole staff and everybody's done a tremendous job in the commission also. But I think that Aaron has really stepped up and is doing a tremendous job. I think far over any director of ops we've had. And I really like what you're doing, and I hope that you have the support behind you. But you aren't scared to go out and ask the questions, and it's really nice to see you out on the docks and see you participating with the crew and getting around. So anyway, thank you for the fishing industry for me.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I haven't been out enough lately, but I'll get out some more. So.
Okay, with that, we'll adjourn the meeting earlier than I thought we would, 10:38.